Hello, my name is Simon Atkinson. I'm going to outline three of the learning design approaches from the DIAL-E framework. The framework consists of 10 learning designs, and we are placing these in a particular learning context. For the purpose of this brief presentation, I'm just going to focus on three of the learning designs. These are empathy, what we've at times referred to as cine literacy. I'm going to refer to it here as textual analysis, and analogy. Now, empathy is all about walking in the shoes of others, getting students to envisage what it might be like to be the person or individuals within the materials, either the people about whom stories are told or people who are telling the stories. Not to passively receive the information, but to dynamically engage as a party within the narrative, within the media. Video is an obvious example of these, very rich, very stimulating, but it does apply to other materials as well. And perhaps two of the ways in which this can be operationalized is in getting students to think about particular decision-making processes or to role play particular scenarios. The example I'd offer you is actually from the medical back files, where there is a range of material dealing with very sensitive issues around pregnancy, abortion, euthanasia, suicide, and so on. And the idea that this material, some of which is very accessible, it's not all written in a dense medical style, and certainly elements within it, whether it's conclusions or case studies, can be extracted to provide very useful examples for students, to ask them simply to engage in the skills process, the skills development of evaluating an argument, of learning to understand why particular individuals would approach subjects in a way that perhaps would be quite alien to them. And the second of these, which is a deeper understanding of the content of material, was originally defined in our conversations about cine literacy, because we were concerned in particular with the use of video archives. But we've expanded this to talk in terms of textual analysis generally, and this is really getting students to understand the actual form and structure of the media itself. And this varies, of course, depending on the material that we're discussing. So within the context of film or video, there's the whole question of mise en scène, of montage, of the way in which one might analyze particular approaches to filming, particular approaches to lighting, and so on. But if we were to take a different set of resources, such as those from a sound archive, we might be particularly interested, for instance, in the way that vocabulary is used in different parts of the country. There are some very rich resources in the British Library Sound Archive around different individuals talking, the way in which intonation might vary depending on stress, subtle changes, and obviously a whole range of different skills that could be developed in linguistic analysis. But to think about the way in which questions are asked within an interview situation and so on, these things are an analysis of the detail of the form and structure itself. And even within the printed materials, obviously visual materials, images, but printed materials as well, there's an interesting question about positioning of pieces within the broad context of news articles. And the actual structuring of typeface on the page, all of which is at times worthy of some detailed analysis. The example I would offer here is actually something relatively simple, which is a short piece that actually describes an order of ceremony, and the interesting issue here is about how this is actually laid out on the page, how different individuals are referred to, what that represents, what that means in terms of the priority that's being given to particular individuals at this particular point in history. One might compare this to a modern order of ceremony, be it an institutional graduation ceremony, or perhaps even just a wedding, for instance. Finally, the learning design we want to talk about here is that we've described as analogy. This has been quite an evolution for us. It came quite late in the day when we felt that it did deserve a category all on its own, because we increasingly had colleagues suggest examples where the material in itself was less interesting to them than how they might deploy it in practice in their teaching. And it became clear that there are times when resources can represent something quite different to that which they are explicitly addressing. The examples, one of the most interesting ones that came out from a conversation I had with a colleague was the way in which the sound recording of a steam train, which is available in the sound archives, could actually be used to try and get students to visualize, perhaps diagrammatically, the life cycle of a product, and that it gave some life to this. They would think about the various stages, and you can hear the various stages of a train preparing to leave the station, and you would use this to represent the life cycle of a product. The example here is one where a crowd scene from the archive could actually be used perhaps to illustrate the way in which people respond to influence of others.
Signor Mussolini takes a keen interest as 15,000 young athletes give their annual display.
This is a visual metaphor for followers of fashion. So those three are simply three illustrations from the broader Dialy framework, and we will be providing some more overview material shortly.